Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop. All the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Welcome to Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and tonight we're talking with Holly Seibold. You may remember Holly from previous episodes going back, I don't know, at least 6 years, I think. And she's here to join us again because there's been some exciting news here in Virginia about the elimination of what has been referred to as the Tampon Tax. And that has come after 6 years of advocacy and organizing and legislative work that Holly has done down in Richmond, working with legislators here in Northern Virginia and across the rest of Virginia. So welcome, Holly. Thanks for being here again.
Oh, thanks for having me back, Catherine.
So, like, the work doesn't seem to stop.
No, it keeps going, unfortunately. I mean, that means that, you know, there's our public policy still doesn't reflect the needs of women and girls in the Commonwealth, so we have to keep working to make change.
Well, so it's interesting because I saw you posted probably on Twitter and on Facebook about the official rollback of the tampon tax and when it will take effect. And it will take effect, is that January?
January 1st, 2023.
Of 23. And so it's been a long journey.
Yes.
But it has also focused attention after what I would call kind of a fallow period where these issues weren't talked about as much as they have been in the past. And, I'll have you walk us through all of the years and all of the bills that you have worked on. But this one became a headline. I heard you on Pod Virginia, and that's Michael Pope and Thomas Bowman.
Yeah.
And you appeared on their podcast August 8th, and I was like, wow, Holly, I know her. Which is why I reached out and said, let's come back on the show and explain to people both your organization, the advocacy work that you do, in addition to direct services, and I really don't want to take a thing away from the direct services that you do, and where you're headed next. So the tampon tax is another check mark, and you have a few of those that you've successfully accomplished. But let's roll it all the way back to 2015 for people who may not be familiar with you and may not be familiar with BRAWS, which is the organization that you founded.
Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. I love talking about my story and the history of BRAWS. We started in January of 2015 when I read an article about the need for women who are living in domestic violence shelters to access basic essential needs such as pads and tampons and new underwear and new bras as well. And I say the word new, and I want to emphasize that because it's important that women who are struggling already in crisis situations have access to new items, because, you know, that's the dignity piece is just such an important element of the work that we do. You know, making sure that they feel clean and special and ready to take on a new life and find independence for themselves, so they don't go back into a crisis situation. And so once we found out that once I discovered that this was happening, I did a collection drive in my house, and, you know, just told the story. And so many women who attended this first collection drive were just shocked to learn that this was a need in the community. And so we delivered those items to local shelters, and a few months later, I got a letter from one of the staff person at one of the shelters that we donated products to, and asked for if we had more supplies. And you know, I had tapped out most of my friends at that point, and I had to reach out and think of new innovative ways to collect. And I contacted just my local churches and synagogues and restaurants and businesses to see if they would also put boxes in their stores and in their lobbies. And next thing you know, we collected so many items, and I kept passing them out to different shelters. And 4 months after that first collection drive, May of 2015, we became an official nonprofit, and it was called BRAWS.
And, you know, and it's such a snowball effect too, because you're a former teacher, number one. So it's not like you went to, you know, a university and got a degree in how you start a nonprofit and successfully change public policy. You're a teacher by training.
Right.
But those skills, it's amazing to me every day when I meet former teachers who are doing something else, how much those basic skills make such a difference in how you apply, you know, organizing, messaging, educating to people. So the first thing was people were like, how can this be happening in this country? Like, how can, you know, shelters serving domestic abuse victims not have these things available? And that was sort of the first aha. And it was at the same, Jennifer Weiss Wolf wrote the book Period's Gone Public. Period's Gone Public, yes. it was the tip of my brain.
No.
Period's Gone Public, and she kind of came to this at the same time you did back in 2015.
Yes.
So up to that point, there had not been a lot of conversation, and to my knowledge, the term menstrual equity had not been coined.
Right.
This idea that somehow the fact that just being a woman who experienced menstruation every month, that you were somehow, you were taxed for it, you were denied the ability to fully participate, which we discovered about girls in schools, which was an amazing, another aha moment.
Right.
And women who are incarcerated.
Right.
So as your journey unfolded, you took this one element of education and then you rolled it out to women who were like, how can this be happening?
Right. Yeah, once we became a nonprofit, we were going to more and more shelters, and I was working, just like, being a teacher really did, it helped with my training on how to work with children and teenagers, and I was having these conversations with the kids and the teenagers in shelters and trying to understand, what obstacles they faced by not having access to these supplies. And that's when I decided it was time to expand beyond shelters and move into the schools. And so it was important that the products were received by social workers, school counselors, teachers, anybody that's working with students, and who are ensuring that they have the supplies they need to get a full education. And that's, being a teacher, that's more important to me than anything, making sure that kids can go to class and they can stay in class and they can learn uninterrupted. And it was not enough to me that they were actually in the clinics. So that's what girls were doing at the time. That's part of the conversations I was having with many students. They would have to, navigate these intricate webs of the school administration, the policies to find their way to the clinic in the middle of class. And by that point, it was too late. So that's what spurred this advocacy towards making sure that the products are accessible and
where
free.
They need to be.
Where they need to be, which is the bathrooms. And so that led to our work in Richmond. And additionally, working with one of the shelters we started working with in the beginning as well led to more change, because we were working with an organization called Friends of Guest House, which it was a shelter, but it's really...
It's a reentry program for women coming
targeted.
out of
Exactly.
incarceration.
And we were having conversations with them, like, my goal was to make sure they had the supplies they needed to get employment. But in our discussions, finding out that they didn't have access while they were incarcerated, which is appalling. And so that again led to legislation as well, just having these conversations with the women that we worked with. And so, our work, I think, the goal was direct service, but at the same time, I had a revelation along the way that it's important not only to provide these direct services, but to make long systemic change in the Commonwealth.
And that's exactly right. So often nonprofits who are focused on direct services, whether it's human services or something else, you're kind of putting a Band-Aid on a gaping wound if you can't go upstream and address why the problems are creating a crisis in the first place.
Exactly.
And again, I think it's awesome because you went in and it never occurred to you that you couldn't do this, which I think is a marvelous way to move through the world, not saying, well, I don't know how to do legislative advocacy, or I'm not sure you just did it anyway. And not only did you do it, but you brought women together who were behind you in doing it, and even your kids. And I just want to take a moment to talk about Morgan and Maddie and the fact that they were really small when you started this, but you took them down to subcommittee hearings at 7:30 in the morning. They were part of drives. Morgan has been on panels. She has testified. Your children, and that's a son and a daughter, you have normalized for them advocacy, policy making, and talking about issues that other people are uncomfortable with. In fact, I think in one of the first committee hearings you went to, one of the legislators said that about one of the young girls who stood up and talked about this issue. Yeah,
one of my goals, I grew up in a different time than the generation of kids now, and as did you, Catherine.
Yes, it was a different time.
And we can admit that, I feel like the reason we've gotten to this place is because we grew up in a way that we were unable to talk about it. So I don't necessarily think that people, I don't think lawmakers intentionally left tampons and pads off of the list of things that should be tax-free. It's just more of because of a lack of education and a lack of understanding.
And the fact that most legislators are men and always have been.
Yeah, they didn't understand it as something that is an essential, critical item. Same thing with shelters, if you're looking for funding, finding funding for tampons, that doesn't necessarily become a priority, but food, clothing, those are the things that
they
the staff
deem
are
those
for.
essential, and
Yeah.
yet these things are essential.
Exactly. Because it's just a lack of education, lack of communication, lack of talking about it. So when the girls came down to Richmond and started sharing their stories, I just felt like it was revolutionary, because it's just something that was unheard of before in the halls of the General Assembly. And now I feel like we've been able to make a huge systemic change in Richmond, in our school system, in our prison system. Through both parties. It's an issue that has crossed
Party
lines,
lines,
right? And so, finally, after 6 years of reaching out to Democrats and Republicans, we finally are living in a Commonwealth starting January 1st that no longer taxes women for tampons and pads for basic need that they already struggle to afford in the first place.
And what's funny about that is, like, Republicans and Democrats both get periods.
Yeah.
So there you go. So
right.
how's it a partisan issue? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But I want to take a moment too to say that to this day still, all the people who buy products and donate them to BRAWS for distribution are paying tax.
They are.
Lots and lots of tax on these products, even though they're donated to you. The people purchasing them are paying a lot of tax on these products.
Right.
And they shouldn't be taxed.
Right, which is one of the reasons it was hard to get the tax away, because our state depended on that money, but we can find it elsewhere.
Well, and budgets are about priorities, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so this is very interesting because, this governor came in with the idea that he was going to repeal the grocery tax. And I think we should mention that Jennifer Boysko has been a supporter from the beginning. And I think, between you and Jennifer, you're like, I think I see an opening here.
Right, yeah. Jennifer, gets credit for it. I mean, she made sure that, knowing that the governor campaigned on removing the tax off of groceries, she kept pushing for the removal off of personal hygiene items. And it was funny because the Republican senators actually piggybacked off of her bill, just to get their legislation through. So it was we were worried for a little bit as it crossed over to the House, but whatever it takes to make it through, it's a success.
It is a success. And we're going to go to a short break. When we come back from our break, we are going to continue talking with Holly Seibold. She is the founder of BRAWS. And what she is doing impacts our students in schools and impacts all of us. So please join us after the break. This is Inside Scoop.
Open road, here comes the Heffley family.
Whether it's a short trip or a long haul,
Estimated time 47 hours.
they will beg,
You're hungry? I'm happy to provide.
they will plead.
Deep fried butter on a stick.
But whatever you do, don't wimp out.
Now you're talking.
Make them buckle up.
He can't hurt.
Remember, safety first. Cheese curls second.
Are you orange?
Eva Marie smoked 12,000 packs of cigarettes over 15 years. She quit, and now there's a new lung cancer screening that could save her life. You stopped smoking. Now start screening. No matter how much you smoked, early detection could save you. Talk to your doctor or learn more at savedbythescan.org.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and we are talking with Holly Seibold, who is the founder of BRAWS, bringing resources to aid women's shelters. And it's so interesting, Holly. It's one of those acronyms that, you know, nobody really remembers what the BRAWS stands for.
Yes.
It's just BRAWS, and people know what BRAWS is. And it does have a double meaning in that it is pads and tampons, but also underwear and bras with new tags on them. And to your point, is like, you know, gently used hoodies are one thing, but underwear and underclothes need to be new with tags on them. And you have really stuck by that. I remember doing a hurricane relief project at the BRAWS office for Houston.
Yes.
Which was enormous, and that's one of the things of all the direct services that you have provided. You've also been amazing at pulling people together at the drop of a hat, getting people to show up, get the products, get them boxed, get them shipped.
Yeah.
That was an amazing thing, and again, so many bras and underwear, because of all the things people need when you're in a crisis and you've lost everything, all of your possession, all of your clothes. You need that basic thing.
Yeah, we want to make sure that women and girls are not forgotten in a crisis. You know, again, if people have good intention, food is essential. You know, but we want to make sure there's that their needs are also met. And yeah, we that was an awesome opportunity we had, and the support in the community was amazing during that hurricane collection drive. But we've also had the same support from people we did back in August, when the Afghan refugees flew to the area.
Yep,
we
they flew into Dulles, and they had temporary facilities at the Expo Center and the National Conference Center.
Yeah, and we worked with different organizations and to make sure that we collected items and distributed them to those who are just new residents arriving in our community. And still to today, we have partnered with Lutheran Social Services, and we received a grant from the Community Foundation of Northern Virginia to keep supplying products to those families, so that they have access to new underwear and bras, as well as pads and tampons.
You know, and it's interesting too, the collaborations that have formed, and I can just say that during COVID, I think when we look back on this years from now, one of the silver linings was the number of nonprofits who discovered each other for the first time and discovered, and I'll just bring up She Believes in Me, because I work with them, and I actually still do their pickups every other Wednesday from BRAWS and take it out to Herndon. But you know, that was a program that was sort of an image positivity for young girls in elementary school. But when COVID hit and suddenly they were supplying food to the families because schools were closed, I don't even know how you all found each other, but there were so many nonprofits that I know of who suddenly discovered organizations they'd never heard of, and everybody started working together, like just as if you'd known each other all your lives.
Well, it took a community to make sure that those needs were being met. There's really amazing people who work in the nonprofit world, and they reached out to us when they learned about what we do. Many did not have the funding to be able to purchase these products, so we were able to deliver them to the different organizations, and therefore it freed up their own money to purchase other items, extra food if they needed it, beds, pajamas, anything they needed, they can cover, because we were making sure that we were covering the needs of making sure that their bra and underwear and pads and tampon needs were being met. So it's a great community, great collaboration. We don't work directly with individuals, never have, because we understand that there's a distribution
network.
Yeah, I mean, that allows us actually to reach more and more districts throughout Virginia. Like, we're all the way down in Prince William, we're down in Southwest Virginia, out in Loudoun, Fauquier County, and the people who are on the ground there know their communities best. And so if they tell us that they have 5 girls who need bras in sizes small, medium, and extra large, that's what we'll ship out to them. They know their clientele best, and we trust that they are doing what's best for them. And obviously we have a vetting process, but it ensures that those who are most in need get the resources that they deserve.
And immediately too.
And immediately,
because, I mean,
yes. We're able to ship.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, the immediacy of your program and how you have really honed it, because every once in a while I'll see a posting on social media that says, look, our shelves are empty.
Yeah.
You know, and you've got Amazon wish lists set up. So people don't actually have to drive to the drugstore and, buy them and drive them over to your office and leave them. they can actually just look at your list, understand, to your point, specific sizes, how many, brands, different kinds of things, so that you can purchase them. They all arrive in pallets. Another group of volunteers comes and unpacks everything. You know, and you have a wonderful operations person who keeps that ship going so that it all gets boxed up and gets back out to them.
And as you said, we don't necessarily we don't make up these numbers that we put on our wish list. It specifically comes from one of our partner organizations who perhaps a woman with 3 kids walked in yesterday, you know, and they reached out to us and we put those sizes up on the wish list, and we purchase the community purchases the items, and then we make sure they get them. So it's all very grassroots, very organic, and it's the best way to meet the needs of those in our community.
And again, it's not like you were trained in logistics, but look at you.
No, I mean,
but look at you, because you have become like the queen of logistics.
I know.
I know where to get it. I know when to get it. I know how to get it, and I know how to get back out in the field, and I can all do it like.
Well, I'm surrounded by amazing volunteers. It's not all me. I just have a great network of people who are helpful.
And I will mention that the Mardi Gras, which has always been your signature fundraiser, and of course, COVID made that really difficult too. You know, you did a virtual fundraiser, which, you know, Tom and I got a very nice dinner out of that fundraiser that we still talk about.
Thank you.
But that is your community, that people stepped up to make sure you had operating funds even when you couldn't hold Mardi Gras. But this past year, you did it a little differently. So you had part A, virtual, and part B, in person.
Right.
You know?
Well, the money, Mardi Gras is our largest source of income to this day, and that's for those of your viewers, it's a fundraiser that we hold every year, and so it ensures that we have the money to basically sustain our organization all the way through December. And without that, we would be struggling. And so given the situation of COVID earlier this year, we had to do something online, and we were able to earn money from that, and then we had to move it to it in person. So between the two events, we were able to cover our expenses and we are set at least for another couple of months. We're also very fortunate, though, to receive grants. We received a grant from Fairfax County this year for the first time ever.
Oh, that's fantastic.
The Ccfp Grant, we're excited to have that. It's a 2-year grant. Private funders like K-Fritz Foundation, Potomac Health Foundation have stepped in to also provide us funding for the different areas of Northern Virginia. I think K-Fritz is covering Arlington, Alexandria. Potomac Health Foundation covers Prince William County, and then 100 Women Giving Strong.
They are great.
Yeah,
they are great.
They are an amazing organization, and they also were able to fund us to help in Loudoun.
You know, and that's what it takes. Talk about it takes a village.
Yeah.
But you've really got the names and phone numbers of the villagers.
Yeah.
Which is and that's amazing too, how you balance your funders, and you've got really great funders.
Really
but
great.
It's all volunteers. Like the engine of what you're doing is people just stepping up, showing up because they want to.
Right.
To me, that is amazing.
Yes. No, we're very fortunate and very lucky, and I'm just surrounded by amazing women and men who are able to jump in and help our cause.
So let's talk about, we touched on schools before about trying to get the products in the restrooms where girls need them, because you heard, and you did a survey that was very interesting too, about the amount of class time that what girls were missing because their clothes were stained and they had to call to be picked up, or they didn't have the supplies necessary to even come to school.
Right.
You know, and so class time is being missed just because you're a girl who's having a period, which doesn't seem right.
No, it's not acceptable at all.
So you started even before you got the General Assembly to agree that these products should be free and available in schools across Virginia, and there's 133 school districts.
Yeah.
Very different locations. You actually had a volunteer group that started showing how it could be done, again on a volunteer basis.
Yeah, we tried for the first year to get the General Assembly to see the importance of access in the bathrooms, and it would be a very large price tag. So I would have to say they were receptive to learning a little more about it, and so I piloted a program. The city of Manassas, which is a smaller district, was very willing and open to work with us. We worked with different funders in the area, businesses, and a couple of different foundations and individual donors who helped us pay for machines and
the
for
dispensers,
the machines, the dispensing machines that went into the bathrooms of their middle school and high schools, and as well as the products for a year. And our goal is really to show how what an impact that it would make for the students in the schools. So we gave them a survey. We gave the students surveys, before the machines went on the walls, and to find out about what the need was in the different schools. And so we found out about 11% of the kids alone missed school each month because they didn't have access to supplies, even with products being in the clinics. And so we installed the machines, and we kept them in there for a year, and then afterwards we gave a survey again, and I think the number went down to like 2% of the students reporting, that they didn't miss any school, that they missed school because of their period. So there should be, by having these products in the bathrooms, they have 100% access to the supplies where they would use them, not down in the clinic or front office, and they just take care of their needs and go back to the class. If they did miss supplies, if they did miss class, it was typically because the machines could have been empty, and they had to, ended up having to go to the clinic. We also did a program like this at Justice High School. We worked with the Girl Up program, and Jen Golubeck, who's been amazing all these years, was the sponsor of that program. Now the difference in that program is it was even more successful because the girls took ownership of the program, and they always made sure that the products were stocked. We didn't do dispensers. That was more like they were like more container style. Yeah. And the girls who were part of the club just would constantly open up the drawers, monitor it, make sure, and if there wasn't supplies, they would reach out to us, and we would make sure that they had the supplies they needed to refill the container. So it was a very successful program, and one that to this day, I think those girls are very proud now. They're probably all graduated in college by now, but they did come down, they testify for many years in Richmond, and their stories were powerful, and that's what actually led to the change in the legislation a couple of years ago.
And I agree with you. It's empowering for them. First of all, they realized that they had power. Yeah. And I often say on the show, the quickest way to give away your power is to believe you don't have any. Yes. But you showed them that they did. They did have power. And then being able to actually do this program, manage the program themselves, also showed that they had agency. Yes. Like, we can solve our own problems. And I remember seeing the pictures, and they were like little plastic drawers, and they put the stuff in there. But sometimes it doesn't have to be high tech. It didn't have to be a dispenser on the wall to work. Right. And so that to me is like, you gave a gift not just to the school and not just to the legislature, but you really gave a gift to these girls to understand how much they are capable of doing, no matter how young they are. Right. And that has been a real lesson that I have seen in all of this. So when we're going to go to a break, when we come back, we are talking with Holly Seibold. She is the founder of BRAWS, and there is still more to say. You're going to be surprised. But menstrual equity is still uppermost because it is still a problem we have not quite solved.
Nice going, Spencer! I can't believe we broke Old Man Hennessy's window.
Correction, dude. You broke. I just threw the ball.
This is really bad. What are we gonna do?
We? Go to the door, ask for the ball back.
Are you serious?
It's my ball, Myrtleback.
You're so dead. I'd run away.
Yeah, to Uruguay.
Kiss your life goodbye. Sorry.
Let's go. See ya. Remember me and your well.
Nice one. Some friends you are. Hi. Tell him it was an accident. And we can fix the window. Come on. I'll come with you.
Loyalty. Pass it on.
You go first.
A message from the Foundation for a Better Life.
One day these rats were playing in the woods. Well, it's a matches and that's no good. Listen to smoke before you give it a try. Only you. Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about nothing very nice. Holy smile. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches. Don't play with fire.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Fire.
Awkward. I'm the awkward silence. You try to avoid me, then there I am again.
But an awkward silence can be a great thing.
Like Kelly here is about to demonstrate.
You haven't really been yourself lately. Are you okay?
Find out how you can help a friend with their mental health at seizetheawkward.org.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and tonight we're talking with Holly Seibold. She is the founder of BRAWS. And Holly, when we went to break, we were talking a little bit about the program in the schools and the fact that these young girls went and testified down in Richmond. You had a student advisory council too, because I remember being on panels, moderating panels, and the fact that some of these young girls even went to Capitol Hill, because we haven't even talked about federal advocacy. But you really, you got these young girls to understand that they can be a force for change. But when you first started going down to the General Assembly, and that would have been 2016,
right?
Not everybody was welcoming. In fact, you know, there were things that were kind of pretty shocking to you, and I think to the rest of us too, about some of the games that were played unnecessarily, almost as if to make sure that you would be discouraged enough not to have the audacity to come back.
Yeah, you know, I've been involved in politics my whole life. I've been volunteering in campaigns, and I thought I was pretty in tune with how our legislators work and how a bill is passed. You know, I've seen the School of Rock video.
Schoolhouse Rock.
Schoolhouse
how
Rock.
A bill is made.
I have seen that video many times, and so I assumed that that it was going to be a pretty easy process. Boy, was I very surprised at the way Richmond actually works. Mainly because I didn't realize that it was a part-time government. And so a lot has to be done in a short amount of time. And because of that, you know, there are so many bills that are reviewed and considered. And so our bill, backing up a little bit, I reached out to my delegate, which is Delegate Mark Keem originally, who actually had put in, ironically, even before I started BRAWS, a bill about the tampon tax years ago, because one of his aides actually wanted it removed.
Was that Julia Kim?
I think so.
I think it's Julia.
So. Yeah.
And I think it was Julia Kim.
And yeah, so she had brought it to him. He put it in, but it received no traction, and it really went nowhere. And I didn't know about it at the time. And you know, without having advocacy and support on a bill, a lot of times down in Richmond, I've learned over the years, you know, they can just quietly go away. And so, you know, because of the resistance Mark experienced the first time he put it in, and almost like the teasing and jokes he received for a man putting in a bill to remove the tax on tampons, he didn't want to do it again, essentially. And so at that time, Jennifer Boysko was a new delegate, and she wasn't necessarily my representative, but I heard really great things about her. So I went and reached out to her and asked her if this is something that she would consider, and she did. And we really strategized ways to make it a little more appealing to a legislative body that
doesn't want to talk about tampons, or periods, or menstruation.
Exactly.
They just don't want to talk about it.
And especially like with what happened to Mark before. So we called it the Dignity Act. We tried to remove gender from it, and hopefully the word dignity would appeal to men, women,
thinking, sentient beings, just in general.
Republican, Democrat, shouldn't matter, right? It's just about dignity. And so I remember at the time, you know, Jennifer, who will, you know, become a very good friend of mine now, said something about, like, you know, I don't even think that they've ever, like, uttered the word period in the halls of the General Assembly before. And I was like, how am I going to get up there and talk about this? And I'm like, oh, you'll be okay. And she did. She submitted the bill, and it came up in the Finance Committee. And so this was, again, new to me. And so I wake my kids up at like 4 in the morning and
put them in the car.
Yeah, because what I didn't understand is I was like, why they have these committees starting at like 6 a.m. in the morning, and part of it is maybe to keep people away. If you
that could be it.
Read between the lines here. And another is they just have so many bills and it's so much they have to fill in a short amount of time. And so we went up there, I prepared my statement, I had my paper up, and I was like ready, I spoke, and they were all very considerate, and then they just killed the bill right there. They just take it, and they're like, oh, we'll set it aside for next year.
Yeah, lay it aside, or whatever the euphemism is for killing it.
Yeah, we'll table it until next year. And so I just was shocked by the whole system. Like, you know, we prepared, we're ready, we're there, and then it's just done that quickly. But it was a really interesting opportunity. We were able to go to the floor, and Delegate Boysko, who's now Senator Boysko, recognized me and my organization and the work that we do, and recognized my family for coming down that day. And I just thought it was really an incredible experience. It's something I'm not willing to give up just yet on. And so next year, we not only did Senator Boysko introduce the bill again, but Delegate Corey introduced a bill that was incorporating making sure that women who are incarcerated had access to the supplies that they needed. And I think it was Delegate Keem at that time also was back involved again in it. And he introduced a bill to make sure that the girls who are in schools have access in the bathrooms, like we talked about earlier. It was the same process again, going down to Richmond early in the morning. This one was a little interesting because the Finance Committee was not that happy about it being reintroduced. We already went through this last year. And so they actually, after I brought my kids with me, and we waited all morning, woke up at 4, got there at 6, waited all morning, and then all of a sudden, they decided that they don't want to hear the bill, and it was the only bill that was left. And I still remember it was Delegate Hugo at the time said there's a 9 o'clock rule, and we have to hard stop at 9 o'clock. And it was the only bill that hadn't been heard yet. And we had brought in not only at this point, I should also mention, it was not only my kids, but it was a lot of people from the Northern Virginia community.
Who had come with you, right?
Yeah,
people,
Richmond community, a lot of people. The whole audience was full of people who were advocating for the removal of this tax. And then he just stopped it and didn't want to hear it. And so it created a lot of commotion. By the following week, they heard the bill again. Now they killed it again. But they gave us an opportunity for our voices to be heard, which was very important, and taught me and my family and my kids and the teenagers that came down with us and the other advocates that, not to give up on something if it means a lot to you and you want to see change. Now, I have to say that year we were unsuccessful with the school bill, even with teenagers coming to talk about their experiences in schools and not being able to access products. But we also worked with Friends of Guest House, who I mentioned earlier, formerly incarcerated women who also did come down and testify and share their stories. And the committee was moved, Republican and Democrat. And we were able to get that bill passed. And it was pretty monumental. It was a great experience in my life, sitting with the governor as he was signing this legislation, along with a few elected officials, Delegate Corey, and women from Friends of Guest House who were advocating and had their voices heard and didn't give up. And so the lives of people now in prison were changed because of this legislation that all of us were fighting for. So that was the first time in my life that I actually understood, like, when you work for something and you don't give up, you can see change happen. And so that was incredible, and that motivated me to keep going. So the following year was I think it was 2018 maybe at that point. 2018. That's when we were able to bring even more and more and more students down to Richmond and keep speaking at all the different committees and the different hearings. And finally, even the Fairfax County Public Schools, which is the largest school district in Virginia, the person who works for them, their lobbyist down there, finally also agreed to allow these products to be mandated in schools. Now, they wanted it funded. Right. They wanted the state to pay for the funding because it still is an unfunded mandate. But at the same time, they did agree that this is best policy for our students.
And sometimes it's incremental like that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Baby
sometimes
steps.
It's baby steps.
Can't give up.
You can't give up. And so, talking about an unfunded mandate, we do have 133 school districts in Virginia, and some of them are in very rural places.
Right.
Their school budget looks very different from the school budget in Fairfax County, which is a behemoth. But again, no one suggests that we should cut the budget by removing toilet paper or hand soap or paper towels from the restrooms of our school system.
Right.
It's just that because this has never been seen on equal footing as basic things like hand soap and toilet paper, it's much harder to get people to see the urgency of something they've never funded, never talked about, and never provided. That's a heavy lift.
Yeah, but I do believe that once the program is implemented and they see the benefits of the program, they see the test scores rising, they see attendance rates increasing, they see the students happier and just more socially active. They're participating in sports now. They're doing theater, things that they couldn't do before because they didn't have access, that they will see the benefits of finding room in their small budgets for pads and tampons, because they'll understand that this is why we're here. Why are we in school if we're not going to be able to provide them opportunities to stay in school?
Right, and it's a basic necessity.
It is.
It really is.
Yeah.
Like, periods come every month.
I
They
know.
just do. They just do.
Just
And
like toilet paper and paper towels and soap, they need these products in the bathrooms.
And yeah, where they are needed.
Right.
You know, I can remember being at Neiman Marcus in New York City and sending you a text message
I love it.
of a tampon machine in the bathroom at Neiman Marcus, and it was like a tampon was like 50 cents, and it only took coins. I'm like, wow, if you are shopping in Neiman Marcus, seriously, and you need they're going to make you pay for it with coins. This is the thinking, and I bring this up because our thinking culturally needs to change.
Yes, I was actually getting my COVID shot at the government center a couple months ago, and they were charging 50 cents for tampons in the government center. And I actually wrote Chairman McKay and told him about this, and actually I just saw him recently, and he let me know that now they have free products in the bathrooms.
As they should.
Right, and so I think this is the same theme that I've talked about all along, is I don't think people intentionally leave out, except for maybe that incident with
Neiman Marcus?
No, or Hugo. Intentionally wanted to leave this out of the policy, our policy, but it's just not a priority. It's not something they think about, and unless you bring it to their attention, why are they going to spend the extra money to put it in there?
Well, I give a lot of props to the girls that have participated, as you said, over the years.
Yeah.
It's funny when they're young how quickly they go from being middle school to 7 years later they're on their way to college.
Yeah, I know.
You know, like they grow up so fast, but I think you've done a huge favor by destigmatizing this as a topic of conversation.
Oh, yeah.
They have become comfortable in advocating for themselves, even about things that you and I back in the day would have died 1,000 deaths of embarrassment to even like have whispered, right, at sleepovers.
Oh, no.
You know, it's different. The gift that you have given young women and girls for advocacy and to talk about things that, quite frankly, everybody, including men, should understand about how human bodies function.
Yeah, no, I do. I hope I've left that for them. You know, my daughter was 2nd grade when I started this, and now she's going into 10th grade. And she and her friends they go into the bathroom at high school, and they'll call me and let me know which bathrooms are missing products.
See, look at you. Look at
they're thinking, they're talking.
I know they're going to put up a plaque for you. It's like the Holly Seibold tampon dispenser. In fact, think about that out there, viewers. If you want to fund a Holly Seibold honorarium tampon dispenser, you could probably do this. We're going to a quick break, and then we're going to be back again to talk more with Holly Seibold.
Your time is gonna come. Your time is gonna come. It's up to you to reach out to be that friend who comes along. Your day is gonna come.
When you make a friend, you make a difference.
Your day is gonna come.
Friendship. Pass it on. A message from the Foundation for a Better Life.
Good one, son.
Last summer, my new dad took me on vacation. First, we went deep sea fishing.
Wow! I'm so proud of you, son.
And then we went on Thunder Shark. That was awesome! Let's go again. 3 times. I gotta say, it was pretty cool.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of kids in foster care will take you just as you are.
What's it feel like when a woman's having a heart attack? Chest pain, like there's a ton of weight on your chest. Severe shortness of breath. Unexplained nausea. Cold sweats. There's an unusual tiredness and fatigue. There's unfamiliar dizziness or lightheadedness. Unusual pain in your back, neck, jaw, one or both arms, even your upper stomach are signs you're having a heart attack. Don't make excuses. Make the call to 911 immediately. Learn more at womenshealth.gov/heartattack.
Operation Wonder Park is a go!
There's nothing more powerful than imagination.
Honey, have you seen my cell phone?
But don't just imagine.
My park came to life?
Ooh, a plot twist.
Use STEM to build, create,
She did it.
and change the world.
Who's with me?
I'm more of a 2 feet on the ground kind of guy.
It's gonna hurt tomorrow.
If she can STEM, so can you. Find out more at She Can STEM.
we're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and we are talking with Holly Seibold, who is the founder of BRAWS. So we touched a little bit on the fact that up until very recently, truly very recently, legislators were men. And that was in state houses, that was in Congress, that was in the Senate. You know, men still are very much an enormous presence where policies are made everywhere, including in private businesses, right? And so men who were not raised talking about how women's bodies function or what it means to have a full life because you can manage something that is not optional, right? And that you have adequate access to the things necessary to manage something that happens regularly so that you can fully participate in the rest of the world just like men do. And I do think that there's a gap in understanding that basic fact by people who still make policies and happen to be men.
Right. You know, how I see the work that we've done over these years is not necessarily, it's not necessarily about periods, it's not necessarily about, you know, the actual biological function of it. It's, to me, it's about opportunity. It's about freedom that our girls and women should have, the same freedoms and opportunities that men have. So you're talking about the girl in class who goes to the bathroom, gets her period, has no access to a pad, then has to go back to class, get permission to walk to the office, then has to go to the office, get that pad, and then find a bathroom to use it in. By that point, her underwear is stained, and she has to call her parents to go home. Now the parent, it could be working an hour away, so now she can't go back to class because she would be humiliated. She's going to sit there in her own blood for another hour. And so that entire time, that hour and a half that she's been doing this, she could be in class learning math, right? My daughter, it only has, they do like a block system, so they only have math every other day. So she's missing math that day. She doesn't have math the next day. She'll have math again, but she's already missed this block of time. And so now she gets to class on Thursday and she doesn't know, she missed, I mean, you talk about math, for example, which is a foundational subject, and missed the foundational piece that she should have learned on Tuesday. So now is even more confused with the assignment, can't do that assignment, can't catch up, and then by next week she has a test and fails. So to me, it's about equality and freedom and access to an education. You know, you're talking about the girl who, you know, loves running, right? There's no way that she can be able to run if she doesn't have access to a tampon. And so she will quit. She won't do it. And by not doing it, she ends up losing out on a scholarship that could potentially take her to college and give her a well-paying job in the future.
You actually did a survey, I think, about that on the fact that girls' participation in sports drops off dramatically when they get their period.
It's actually not even my survey. There's a lot of data out there that shows that around the age of puberty, 50% of the girls who were doing activities, and don't quote me on that number, it might be even higher actually, end up dropping out of sports because of, you know, not access to a sports bra, they don't have, or they don't want to wear a sports bra, or they're embarrassed to ask their mom for a sports bra, they don't want to talk about it. Or, you know, let's say they were a swimmer and they can't use a pad anymore, they have to switch to a tampon, and they don't have someone they can talk to about that. And that goes back to, again, it just being such a taboo topic that, you know, we can meet, this is not like rocket science. We can meet the needs of girls so that they can have every opportunity they want to, if we choose to, if we want to educate people, if we want to fund it, if we want to make sure the obstacles are removed. We can make sure that girls have all the opportunities that they need and want in life. But we as society have to be willing to do that, and it's not the kids. I don't think it's the kids. It's the adults that are uncomfortable with it. It's the adults who don't prioritize it, and because of that, then the kids themselves suffer, especially those who are the lowest income, especially and also those in cultures where periods are just such a difficult topic, and so they just never have that conversation with anybody they trust around them.
It is hard, and you know, talking about what the future holds as far as participation. When I was in high school, I had terribly painful periods, so that I missed like the first 2 days of school, right? Until I went on birth control, like at the age of 15 or 16. And that made it so that I could participate and not, I missed a performance in community theater because of cramps so bad I could not participate in a performance. And the fact that that problem was solved by oral contraceptives. And this was back in the 1970s, I'll have you know, in the 1970s. And now you look at what's happening in the world and you wonder, you know, with drugstores saying, well, our pharmacist can deny you a prescription if it doesn't comport with their religious beliefs. Wow. Okay, it's 2022, and when I was back in the 1970s, I had a path forward so that I could fully participate in my own life in school.
You had to be comfortable having that conversation with somebody as well. Like, you were willing to talk about your cramps, you're willing to find a solution to that problem in the 1970s. You know, now we live in a society where I just saw like 150 Republicans voted against birth control.
Right.
You know,
and that's why I'm saying, you know, how, you know, we take one step forward and then all of a sudden we're looking at all of the things that are being taken away.
Right. So not having access to birth control, not having access to supplies, not, you know, being able to get have access to an abortion if you need it. All it comes down to is removing opportunities and taking away the future of our girls. And I find it, I'm glad that I'm part of this movement, and I feel like if I've done anything in my life, it's the ability to give freedom and a future to so many girls who wouldn't have had it otherwise.
You know, and I will mention, since you brought up abortion, that abortions are still legal here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I could not have imagined in my wildest dreams that there would be a national debate over a 10-year-old raped by an uncle getting an abortion. Like, how is that even a topic where there are two sides to that? Right. And yet there are. And I think that makes people very afraid, as they should be.
Right. Well, because having that baby not only is
a 10-year-old.
Having a baby is not only like physically and psychologically a disaster, but it's also like you just remove the future of that child forever.
And the trauma. She was already raped, and it was already incest. So
it's appalling, and
the fact that public policy is weighing in, that government, and for the people who are like, oh, small government, oh, there's so much government overreach, they're trying to make me wear a mask.
Right.
Oh, wow, really? No. Wearing a mask? That's so hard. Now they're just wholesale, state by state, stripping away the rights of women and girls.
Right, and you know, and menstrual equity is just one of many issues that women and girls have to experience. I like to see public policy benefiting women and girls, not necessarily to their detriment, which is what we're seeing more of lately. But at least, you know, having this conversation today, I can give you 3 positive examples when public policy actually did help women and girls in our Commonwealth.
That's exactly right. And that's, so women who are incarcerated in Virginia have access to pads and tampons, which was not always the case.
And any size and shape, and, you know, any absorbency they'd like.
And on request, right?
On request
no
as
playing
well.
games.
So that's a positive movement from our policymakers.
And then having an unfunded mandate, but nevertheless, this is incrementalism in our 133 school districts.
It is. The school boards are not compliant if they do not offer those in the school bathrooms. And our girls who are now talking about it are very aware of the rule and make it known when their supplies are not available to them.
That they go and they say, where are my pads
and they have a right to. So those listening here should know that they can go and ask their principal for those products if they're not in there. And then finally, just recently, we were able to remove the tax from the tampons, one less obstacle for access to supplies.
And again, I think that was a long overdue, and I'm gonna credit you with giving people the benefit of the doubt that it was not mean or intentional that the world operated this way. It was just lack of knowledge. It was lack of discussion. It was lack of removing the stigma, so we could all have a public conversation about it.
And so now they all know. So there shouldn't be any reason why our public policy does not reflect the critical needs of women and girls in Virginia. So now they know, so we should keep abortion access legal, we should keep birth control legal, and every other obstacle that women and girls face should be available as well.
I think so too, and I think that what that's going to take is, again, having these conversations, and nobody really wants to talk about things like abortion because, you know, no one wants to be pro-abortion, right? This is not an outcome anyone particularly wants, but we're still talking about the self-determination of women to decide when or if
Right.
that they will give birth.
Exactly.
And sometimes it is not a choice that you got pregnant in the first place. And the fact that some of these legislatures are, it's like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, right.
Your government will decide. And the tragedy of so many terminations of pregnancies that are not viable. And in the news media, talking about women carrying around fetuses that are,
it's awful.
It's awful. And it's like, how have we become this culture, a country where any of this is acceptable? It's demoralizing to me to think that 50 years of a right has now been stripped from my daughters in their 30s.
I mean, I have a 15-year-old daughter as well. I worry about her, but you know, luckily, I live in a pretty affluent area. I live in an area that abortion is still legal. If it is not, God forbid, but if it becomes illegal in Virginia, I have the ability to drive her. I can take up time off work, and I can get her to a state where she can access an abortion. But we're talking about people throughout this country who do not live near a state that has abortion, who cannot take time off, who cannot afford to travel through 14 states to get their child an abortion. It's just, it's impractical, and it's just injustice.
Well, connecting the dots full circle, this comes back to your point about access.
Yeah.
You know, people who have resources will always have access to the thing they need. And the people who are, you know, in the most dire straits, so many women, the majority of women who have abortions actually already have children. It's
they can't afford another one.
You know, and in the movement that says we're pro-life, but only until the baby's born, and then there'll be no programs or support for you ever.
Right.
You'll be stigmatized as a welfare queen or whatever. And I think it is so unacceptable, and it disheartens me to see that we are having these conversations in 2022.
Yeah. But all we can do is keep electing our representatives that are going to hear our voices, the voices of me and the children, and that have come down to Richmond, and you and all the other advocates have gone down there over the years, and hear them and do something about it, and not just ignore their voices, and not just continue to worry about their own political interests and the lobbyist groups that are trying to sway them in different directions. Like, we need real people elected who understand change and want to make a difference.
Well, on behalf of the women and girls of the Commonwealth of Virginia, I want to thank you for your service, and I hope that in the future that service to the Commonwealth of Virginia will be even more impactful than it is today.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate being here, so, you know, thanks again for the opportunity, as always.
Thank you so much, and thank you for joining us here on Inside Scoop.